Welcome to the Kelly Green Room. I'm your host, Jonah, and Eagles season is just around the corner. Talking about this new look offense with me today is Zach Berman, author, reporter, and writer for The Athletic. Zach, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me on, Jonah.
Happy you're here, and let's start off with the biggest change in the Eagles offense. Sean Mannion coming over, taking over for Kevin Patullo. I've heard from Nick Foles that he is a genius-level talent when it comes to calling plays and just being that quarterback coach that we saw with Jordan Love. What have you seen from him so far?
Yeah, well, he's never lost the game as OC yet, right? So, at this point, you're hearing very favorable reviews, and I don't want to overstate it. My interactions with him have been brief, but the reviews are quite positive, and I think that he's bringing some concepts that are intriguing to the Eagles that I think could be advantageous for them if utilized correctly, number one. And number two, I think that even though he's short on experience, his background, the fact that he played in the NFL and he was a career backup, almost like a coach in the quarterback's room, I think that will help. But no one can tell you how he's going to do calling a game, right? And that's the big question here, is that play calling can sometimes be a feel, and there's no sense of how he does it. It can be an art, I should say, and so we'll see when they get rolling here, but the early reviews this spring have been quite positive.
I'm glad to hear that, and we saw him do very well with Jordan Love over the past 2 years. Even when Malik Willis had to step in for the Green Bay Packers, he looked great. Are we going to see the same thing out of Jalen Hurts this year? I mean, he had a down year compared to his standards. They didn't make the Super Bowl, which he's done in nearly 40% of his seasons. So are we going to see another great year out of Jalen Hurts, do you think?
I don't know what happened there.
Yeah, I don't know
here.
either. I think I saw you froze and then...
Okay.
All right. So I'll just ask that question again. We saw him
Okay.
do very well. Mannion, we saw him do very well with Jordan Love. We saw him do very well even when Malik Willis had to step in with the Green Bay Packers. He wasn't calling plays, but it's still very helpful to see a quarterback coach do very well with every quarterback put in his situation. Jalen Hurts has made the Super Bowl in 40% of his seasons as a starter. Are we going to see that happen again with this new OC who has done very well with every quarterback who has been thrown his way?
Yeah, I can't tell you they'll make the Super Bowl. I mean, that's a high threshold to hit. But I can tell you, and I think he's a different quarterback than Jordan Love. He's a different quarterback than Malik Willis. But I think there are tools that Jalen Hurts possesses that Mannion can work with, and I think that Jalen Hurts has already proven that he can win at a high level. And I think the burden should be on Sean Mannion to get him to do more and to get him to be better and to unlock a part of Jalen's game that hasn't been there. But Jalen's already shown that he can answer the bell. So I think if anything, I think the burden's on Mannion more than Hurts. But we'll see. That's the thing, is that some of these concepts are different than what Jalen's done. When you talk about the volume that they'll be under center, like it's a lot different than what Jalen's done in his career. So it's similar to the first question. I can't tell you how he's going to do, and that's really what training camps.
All right, we're back after a little bit of technical difficulties with some Sean Mannion talk, the new Eagles offensive coordinator. It seems like a little bit of a lose-lose situation with him in the grand scheme of things for the Eagles, because if he's successful, we'll see him be poached after one season like Kellen Moore was, like Shane Steichen was, and if he's unsuccessful, we'll see him be fired after 1 year, like Brian Johnson was and like Kevin Patullo was. So I'm kind of wondering what's the silver lining here with a guy like Sean Mannion as this play caller.
Well, I think to the first part of it, I don't think you'd mind the byproduct of success, right? Like if you're so good that if you win enough games, go deep in the playoffs, you win, make the Super Bowl, then and you lose your OC, like you'll take that. It's the flip side if you underachieve on offense, you don't want to keep revolving coordinators. But I think the part about winning and having to replace the coordinator, I think that can be overstated, because the objective is to win. And I understand that when you have a head coach who doesn't call plays, this is a conversation that comes up. But the reality is, if you keep winning, like that's the point of it. That's why you play. So I personally think that can be overstated.
Interesting. So with Sirianni then, because he doesn't call plays. If Mannion is overly successful, the Eagles are trying to sustain the success they've been going back and forth with Super Bowl underachieving, Super Bowl underachieving. Is there a world where they promote Mannion and move on from Sirianni?
Well, I mean, I think if you're winning under Nick Sirianni's your coach, right? He's a Super Bowl winning coach, and I don't see that direction. If you're so good on offense, your team's probably that good, right? I mean, the defense is going to be outstanding this year. So no, I don't see that, Jonah. Where I think if they struggle overall, then, or if they struggle offensively or they struggle overall, like I don't think you're going to be looking at the OC taking the head coach's job. So no, I've heard that theory. I don't buy that theory.
I agree. I'm a big fan of Sirianni's. I will never take winning for granted with this Eagles team. When I was born, they had won 0 Super Bowls, and now they've won 2. So I'm never going to take winning for granted, and I think Sirianni has done an excellent job at winning. But back to Mannion, I'm a little bit worried about this run game because he wasn't involved at all in the run game with the Packers. He was the quarterback coach and then a passing game assistant. But he wasn't involved with the run game whatsoever. We also saw the run game coordinator, Jeff Stoutland, leave. So this run game, which already took a bit of a step back last year with this production of Saquon Barkley, how are you seeing that shaping up for the upcoming season?
Yeah, so interestingly, Joe, and I think the big reason for the scheme change was for the running game, was to try to find a different level in that running game and to change some things schematically in the running game, and you're going to see more of a wide zone running scheme. And so even though Mannion hasn't been, he hasn't been an offensive coordinator before or a run game coordinator before, I mean, he's bringing in these run game concepts. He's bringing in these concepts from these offenses that he's been in the past, whether with Sean McVay in Los Angeles, whether it was with Matt LaFleur in Green Bay, whether it was Kubiak in Minnesota, right? Like he's been exposed to these before, and so I wouldn't worry too much. And I do think the running game's going to look different, but I think ultimately the success of the running game is going to be based on how good the offensive line plays or how well the offensive line plays. The offensive line was banged up last year, and I think you saw that, and you saw the toll that it took on them, especially with the Super Bowl season and the surgeries some of those guys had during the offseason. So if the O-line plays better, they'll be better.
I think you're absolutely right with that O-line. I mean, we know that it can be the best in the league when healthy, but health has been a bit of an issue with this team. Lane Johnson, another year older. Jordan Mailata, another year older. But I think one thing that with the run game that I saw that was a little bit disappointing last year was how inefficient Saquon was on a per-touch basis. His yards per carry fell from 5.8 to 4.1, and there were a couple factors that I thought could have been responsible for that. I mean, the less creative offensive coordinator, Saquon entering his age 29 season, running backs tend to drop in production from age 28 to 29 more than any other year. And also a volume issue because the year before he handled 350 carries. That's not something that you see a lot of running backs produce year after year. So with Saquon, is it a thing where we should be worried about him, or are we expecting him to return to that form where we know he can generate yards on a per-touch basis like the best of them in the league?
Yeah, I hear your point. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I think the big issue last year was the lack of explosive plays relative to the previous year. And really, that's where you're going to pick those averages up, right? Let's just do back of the napkin math, right? Is that if let's say he had 5 runs last year stopped for 10-yard gains, which were 50-yard gains the year before, right? So add 40 yards to 5 runs, that's 200 yards, right? I mean, if my math is correct, and you add 200 yards to his total yardage, look what the yards per play is. So I know it's never that simple, but even talking to Saquon last year, it was the explosive plays that really brought it down.
Then what I'm wondering in that case is Tank Bigsby still generated plenty of yards on a per-touch basis. He was at 5.7. Saquon was at 5.8 the year before. Is it a thing where he is going to take a step up in his volume in terms of carries this year, or is it still going to be Saquon as the bell cap?
Well, Saquon's still the bell cow. I do think Tank Bigsby can play a bigger role, and the Eagles like Tank Bigsby. But it's not going to be I don't think it's going to be at the significant expense of Saquon Barkley. So yeah, and part of that has to do with sample size too, right? But I do think to answer I think Bigsby can be a factor in the Eagles' offense, not just the running game, but the offense. But I don't think like Saquon Barkley is going to take a back seat to Tank Bigsby.
I think that's definitely fair to say. I mean, you pay Saquon Barkley like the highest highest paid running back in the league. He just won Offensive Player of the Year. So definitely going to be a focal point of the offense as long as he is on the offense. And just one more thing about the offensive line. Are there any concerns with losing Jeff Stoutland? I mean, he has turned players that weren't necessarily expected to be great into all-pro players. Cam Jurgens was a Pro Bowler, and he was supposed to be Jason Kelsey's replacement. Those are big shoes to fill. Are there any concerns about this offensive line?
Well, I've covered the Eagles going on, this will be my 15th season. Jeff Stoutland's the best position coach I've ever encountered. So you're going to miss the player developer, the mind that he brings, the coaching that he brings, the technique that he brings. I do though, and I say this with like all due respect to Jeff Stoutland because he deserves that respect. The Eagles have outstanding players, and so like Cam Jurgens is a really good player. You mentioned that. Like Lane Johnson might be the best player in franchise history. Jordan Mailata is an all-pro caliber left tackle. So the Eagles have the players that they need to be really successful. Landon Dickerson's he's an all-pro caliber guard. Tyler Steen in his first year as a starter was solid. I don't think he was great. He was solid. But if he's the fifth player on your line, that's a really good line. And so I think that, they're going to miss Jeff Stoutland because Jeff Stoutland's a really good coach. But I think that the key was the players. It wasn't Stout. Stout maximized the players, but the players were the key, and they have really good players. And so we'll see how Chris Cooper, the new offensive line coach, does. I mean, Jeff Stoutland was awesome, outstanding, and deserves every piece of praise that he has gotten and that he will get. I just don't want I don't want to suggest that they're the bad news bears out there because Jeff Stoutland's not out there, right? It's still perhaps the most talented offensive line in the NFL.
Yeah, for sure. Jeff Stoutland earned every single diamond on both of those Super Bowl rings. He was such a fantastic part of that Eagles organization. I'd like to shift a little bit over to that wide receiver core, which is maybe the biggest shift in the offense. Elephant in the room, A.J. Brown is gone. But what do you see out of Devontae Smith this year? This is the first time since his rookie year that he's asked to be the wide receiver one on his team. Can he fill those big shoes that A.J. Brown left?
Yeah, Devontae will be better with more volume. I mean, I'm confident in that. I think Devontae is a number one caliber wide receiver. I think they're still going to miss A.J. Brown because it's a it's like a down the stream effect, right? I mean, your number two receiver isn't as good. Your number three, and so it's like you move on down the stream there. And so I would rather a wide receiver combination with A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith than with Devontae Smith and say Makai Lemon, Dontavian Wicks, but I think Devontae has all the tools. I mean, he was a record-setting receiver. He was a Heisman Trophy winning receiver at Alabama. He was outstanding there. He's been a 1,000-yard receiver twice in his career with the Eagles, or three times with the Eagles. And he's been everything you could want. And so he is. I have no concerns about Devontae Smith. The questions are more like the other wide receivers in the room.
So, in terms of the other wide receivers in the room, you mentioned Wicks, but there are some other guys that they added. Obviously, Makai Lemon in the first round, but also they add Elijah Moore, who I've heard high praise from Nick Sirianni, Hollywood Brown as well. Which one of those guys do you think is going to be the wide receiver two? Because Makai Lemon, he was a highly drafted rookie, but sometimes they give these guys time to develop. Yeah. Is he going to be the wide receiver two day one?
Well, I think at some point Makai Lemon's the second wide receiver, but I think it's almost like a 2-3, right? Like Makai Lemon and Dontavian Wicks, I think, are the next two on the depth chart, and maybe it's we'll see how the snaps are distributed, but I think they're both going to have very big roles.
I think it's definitely interesting to mention that the way that the snaps are going to be distributed, because we saw Devontae Smith in the slot at over 50% rate last year. Makai Lemon known to be a slot receiver. Dontavian Wicks played in the slot. Who's going to be this team's alpha wide receiver one playing outside? Because not everybody can be in the slot every play.
Yeah, I mean, I think Devontae can play on the outside. I think I think Wicks can play on the outside. I think they're going to move these guys around, and so yeah, I would probably say Devontae is your clear number one, but these guys can move around the formation, so I'm less concerned about that.
And I think moving down the depth chart, this Eagles wide receiver core is solid front to back, but there are also too many players in it, and there are going to be cuts made eventually. I'm a guy who I think Johnny Wilson has a lot of potential. I like Darius Cooper. I like that story. Who's going to be the odd man out, do you see? I mean, we're entering training camp. Yeah. They still have a lot to prove, but there's going to be cuts made.
Yeah, and so we need to see, some of these veterans like Hollywood Brown and Elijah Moore. We'll see how they look this summer. Johnny Wilson and Darius Cooper, I think they play the same type of role, like that dirty work, blocking wide receiver role. And so I don't know if you're going to keep both of them. We'll see how Wilson comes off the injury. But it's a good question. It's not one I'm dismissing, but like I would say that's what training camp's for, right? You have these locks, and at the top of your roster, you have these locks. But then after that, you need to see how these guys look. You need to see if there are injuries. You need to see health. So there's a variety of factors there that I couldn't tell you on July 23rd who the odd man out is going to be. I mean, I can tell you though that there's going to be some guys there who, like you might say, can be on the roster who are not going to make it. But that's you have 6 weeks of camp and preseason to figure that out.
I think that's a great point. And you mentioned injuries. Makai Lemon had been dealing with a bit of a hamstring injury. He's also been, I've heard that he's been having trouble adapting to the playbook. Are there any concerns involving that, or is Makai Lemon day one good to go?
Well, he missed time this spring, right? So this is more a health thing. If he's back, and all indications are is that he'll be healthy for the summer. And yeah, there's always an acclimation process. And you're going to be better, you're going to be better on November 21st than you were on, on August 21st or July 21st, whatever it may be. But I think any questions about playbook or anything, I think that's premature, if I'm being honest. I don't think they're there yet. They got to practice. We'll see how the adjustment comes. He did miss time, but he was around the team, and I think that's advantageous. So the key for him is, if he's healthy and he's on the field, and the Eagles have seen it both ways. Like Devontae Smith looked ready to go in his first summer with the team. Jalen Reagor looked like there was going to, there were some growing pains there, obviously, right? And so we'll see. Time's going to tell regarding Makai Lemon.
That's a great point. I think it's good to repeat that he's not going to be the same player that he was on the first day in the building that he will be during Week 1 against the Dallas Cowboys. Or excuse me, the Washington Commanders.
Yeah.
So with Lemon, with Smith, with this entire offense in general, moving over to the tight end group, another part of that receiving core, Dallas Goedert's still that one guy, but beyond him, Eli Stowers was drafted with a high pick, with the second-round pick. Does he make an impact year one, or is this more of a year for him to learn behind Dallas Goedert?
Yeah, I think a lot of that, Jonah, depends on Goddard's health, right? I mean, and, I'm not revealing any secrets here. Goddard's missed time during his career, right? And so he's someone who's had some unfortunate injuries. And so I think as long as Goddard is healthy, he'll take the lion's share of tight end snaps. I know the Eagles can play more 12 personnel and even 13 personnel. But as long as Goddard's healthy, I think Stowers has, a situational role. Now, if it got to the point that Goddard missed some time, the Eagles would need more from Eli Stowers. But if I had to guess, I would probably say he's not going to have as major of a contribution this year because I'm just assuming, I'm not saying Goddard's going to miss time, but I think Stowers' contributions are really tied to Goddard's health this season.
So, theoretically, Goddard does miss time. Is it Eli Stowers' job, or does Grant Calcaterra kind of get that veteran, that veteran presence over him in that depth chart?
I think Calcaterra is pushing, I think he has to play his way onto the roster. I think Johnny Munt is kind of like the number 2 tight end, but Johnny Munt's more of a blocking tight end. And so I think if it got to that situation where if Goddard were to miss time, I think Stowers will probably be the top pass catching tight end. But I say that, Stowers needs to show himself this summer too. Like with all these rookies, unless you're a top 15 pick, like you need to show that they can count on you early on. And so Stowers is someone who was drafted in the 50s. He's got to earn his playing time. But I do think he'd be the top backup as a pass catcher.
Absolutely agreed, and that's why we see some of these big surprises in the draft who rise up and make a huge impact in their rookie year. Puka Nacua comes to mind. Hopefully Eli Stowers, I'm not going to put those high expectations on him, but hopefully he can have a good rookie season. He's a guy who I think could perform pretty well in the red zone with his size. Last year we saw Dallas Goedert get the majority of the red zone work, I think because of a little bit of a lack of creativity. Who do you think is that number one guy in the red zone? Is it still Goddard, or does Devontae Smith take priority over him because of his skill?
Yeah, I would disagree, John. I actually thought, for whatever you want to say about the offense last year, I thought they were quite creative in the red zone, and I think that's part. Their red zone production showed it, and the way they used Goddard was especially creative. So I think actually this coaching staff should try to channel what they did in the red zone last year with Goddard, and I think Goddard should be, the top guy there. But that said, Saquon Barkley running the ball and Jalen Hurts on, quarterback sneaks, I think those are going to be big parts of the offenses as well. But in the passing game, I would expect, Goddard, with his size, with his catch radius, with his ability to kind of find space, he can run after the catch. I think he'd be the top guy in the red zone.
It's good to know, and I think that is helpful with A.J. Brown, that big body, being lost. The Eagles need somebody to step up, and I'm hoping that can be Dallas Goedert in addition to these smaller wide receivers, A.J. Brown. They have not been able to replace him with someone of his size. And I'm glad that you brought up the tush push, the brotherly shove, the QB sneak, whatever you want to call it. With Stoutland moving on, I know you mentioned that the players will be great, but we saw a drop-off in the tush-push production last year. Do you think teams have figured it out? Is it going to be something that the Eagles are still going to rely on in short yardage?
Yeah, I think they will. Now, I do think teams are defending it better, and I think the Eagles could run it better than they did last year, and I think it was officiated tougher last year. And I think this is kind of what you spend your offseason doing, but I still think it's an efficient play. Like if you're converting it, again, I don't have the numbers in front of me. I'm embarrassed to say, but let's say you're converting it, 15% less than you did 3 years ago. You're still converting it, 3 out of 4 times, or 7 out of 10 times, and so I think that's pretty good efficiency there. Now, what they need to avoid is penalties on the play, which is what they had last year, and because that pushes you back. And if you miss it, if you tush push on first and goal at the 1, let's say, and you miss it, you're at second goal at the 1. It's still a good spot there. But if you're if you have a false start on the play, then you're pushed back, and it changes the complexion there. And so I think that was kind of the risk that they ran on there. And it wasn't just the goal line; it was middle of the field, the just short yardage situation. So I think avoiding penalties will be critical, and that goes into the way it's officiated and just being so precise with the play.
Absolutely. I mean, the tush push, the Eagles have turned it into one of the least risky plays in the league apart from penalties. They've been converting it 75% of the time. It was up at 92% the first year that they brought it. I know that was what Jason Kelsey said. But in terms of risk, I know a lot of people have been calling for Jalen Hurts to take more risks, throwing the ball deeper. He has been excellent when throwing the deep ball, but he hasn't done it as much as some other quarterbacks in the league. He has a lot of touchdowns on it, but at a lower percentage of throws. Is that something that we will see more? Is Jalen Hurts going to take more risks, potentially turn the ball over more, but throw more touchdowns?
I don't think you want him to turn the ball over more, but
I agree.
I don't know if the two are mutually exclusive. Like maybe there are some potential turnovers that you live with, but I think that not turning the ball over is a good recipe, right? And you can look at what turnovers mean for wins and losses, and so I think there's a way of being perhaps more aggressive, throwing the ball in the middle of the field without throwing the ball to the other team. So I understand the point of the question. Like there might be certain turnovers you live with, but I don't think that's going to be. I don't think they're going into this saying Jalen turn the ball over more, right? But I think, and I won't even talk about like throwing downfield. I actually think Jalen's been good throwing downfield. I think throwing in the middle of the field is something they can do more of.
I'm really glad you said that because that is something that I have been really preaching is Jalen Hurts shouldn't want to turn the ball over more. That's something that he does among the best in the league is not turn the ball over more. But I've seen people talking that they want him to take more risks and whatever comes with that comes with that. So I'm glad that you mentioned that. My last question for you is something that you put out recently about Nick Sirianni incorporating AI into his game plans. Can you explain some about that? Because that was a little bit puzzling to me. That doesn't seem like something that a coach really should be doing.
Yeah, well, John, that's I mean, respectfully, that's not what I wrote. That he doesn't put it in his game plans. He used it for a speech that he was giving to find an example for a speech. It had nothing to do with the game plans.
My apologies.
So that's where there's an 1,800 word article on The Athletic that I hope people read and they can see it there. But yeah, so he basically used it the way others might use a search engine, and frankly similar to the way I sometimes use ChatGPT, which is like he asked for an example of a sports story with relentless effort, and he went down a rabbit hole where he learned about an Arizona State wrestler, and who had one leg and won the national championship, and he used that as part of his messaging with the team. He also said that the best stories are the ones that like they're creating, not the ones that you find on ChatGPT. So but yeah, no, it had nothing to do with his game plans. I'm happy I got to clear that up. I don't know where that impression came, but that's where I would implore your listeners and your viewers to read the story and not just I guess to whisper down the lane on social media.
Yeah, that is definitely the danger of social media, and I think I fell into that trap a little bit. So I really appreciate you clearing that up with Nick Sirianni. I think a lot of people assume the worst, especially in Philadelphia media, about Nick Sirianni because that has been the nature of Philadelphia sports is to be negative. But thank you so much for clearing that up. I really do appreciate that, and I apologize once again.
All good. I appreciate I appreciate you following my work.
All right, so last question. This is nothing to do with the Eagles, purely fun. Do you think LeBron James is coming to the Philadelphia 76ers?
Yeah, I don't. I would, it'd be a great story if he did. I still think he goes to Cleveland. I think it's like a great bow on his career, but yeah, I wish I knew. That'd be a good story to break. But no, I don't have the answer for that. But look, if you want to be competitive, I think the Sixers offer a competitive situation. I still think I don't think he's coming to Philly. We'll see, though. It'll be fun to follow.
Yeah, I agree with you, but we can hold out hope. Thank you so much, Zach, for joining me. This has been the Kelly Green Room. I'm your host, Jonah. Go follow Zach Berman on Instagram, Twitter, wherever you can find him, all social media. And thank you so much for watching.